Hi everyone, thanks for taking just a few minutes to view this video. My name is Selena Pierman and I'm a workplace behavior specialist right here in Waverly. And we've had the opportunity to partner with UEA to provide some additional virtual training to help support your own leadership development. Today we're going to look at some best practices in writing and preparing performance appraisals. As you embark on that process this year, let's look at some of those key reminders that make this process that much more valuable. Preparing better reviews. Your role as a leader is a critical one in this process. While your influence on your team and people around you is true throughout the entire year, the opportunity that you have to share some time one-on-one with your employees is really important. One of the ways I like to frame this, and you can insert any number you want to into this quote, but you can have 10 years of experience doing performance reviews, or you can have the same year repeated 10 times. Meaning we can simply go through the motions. We can approach this again this year as check, got it done. Yet I want to challenge you a little bit more this year to take the time to listen a little bit more and to remember that even in your own life, you've likely had a leader, could have been a teacher, a coach, a boss, somebody else who had a significant role in your life that knew the importance of giving you tough feedback when you need it and praise and recognition when you needed it. Employment is not an easy process. There are so many factors that impact the employment relationship. Your role as a leader is critical in that. And we really want to encourage you this year to dig a little bit deeper to really think about how you approach this process. As you prepare your reviews, remember this is part of a wider process because performance management itself happens all year through. It's really focused on building relationships and should be an ongoing, continuous process of communicating. Remember, your reviews are one more way to formalize that and do that in a way that honors what you've been talking about all year long or gives you an opportunity to do that better in this meeting and set the stage for better communication this next year. Some key words to remember in terms of the purpose of the performance management process and the reviews you are writing. This is a way to increase two-way communication between supervisors as employees. It's important to identify and resolve performance problems earlier. It's also a great way to recognize quality performance and reward excellent work. It is our opportunity to clarify a number of things, including responsibilities, goals, priorities, and expectations. It does provide a basis for decisions such as promotions, planning, and pay. Accurate reviews are critical in order to help us do all of these things better. Yet it also gives the employee an opportunity to formally indicate maybe they want to stay in the role they're in and they're happy doing that. And this gives us a chance to talk to them about that. Maybe they are interested in a different part of the business or growing in a certain way within the company. We want to make sure we have those conversations so that if we didn't have that, we might lose them. And so this really helps us improve retention because we want to express to the employee an opportunity that they're important to us, encouraging them to be more engaged and ultimately more satisfied as an employee with us. Remember, it is about the relationship, not the form. So as you choose the words to write, it's a critical piece of the documentation. But choose those words with care. We want to find that balance between being accurate and direct, but also encouraging and helping them learn. We have to start with the expectation that everybody wants to do their job well. Now, I know there are some folks that you might question that a little bit, and I say that with a sense of humor, yet we also know sometimes there are just more challenging relationships with employees. Take a look at those and understand why those might be difficult. However, Most often, we can expect people wanting to do a good job. Don't rinse and repeat one year to the next. I get cautious and concerned when I see performance appraisals that have been copied and pasted from previous years, and I've even seen the same typos repeated year after year. Employees notice. So the time and value we place upon this process is clearly reflected in how much our employees do. Remember, every interaction we have can either strengthen the relationship with our employee or take away from it. It's our opportunities as leaders to be the kind of leader to write the comments, express the appreciation, give them the growth steps that you might have not had yourself, but now you are that to someone else. We also know that the information that you document and the review that is produced is still a legal cornerstone within our business culture. In the legal environment that our business operates in, performance reviews are still a standard piece of documentation. So it's important that we take great care in how we document those and keep that on record, because there is an opportunity it would be a piece of documentation later in the process. Not necessarily just for any type of post-employment claim, but they're critical for us understanding a pattern of behavior that we may have to make decisions on later. Performance reviews are a key driver in comprehensive performance management. Let's look at a few examples. And while there are three critical components of appraisal effectiveness, today I want to focus just on data and documentation. While you're writing your appraisals the next few weeks, remember some of these best practices. You need to be able to pull notes you have from all year long. It's so important that we review the employee for the entire review period, not just the last few months. It's really hard to remember what your employee did 262 days ago, unless it was really good or really bad. Human memory is not great. So please take some time to get organized. Once you get organized, it's a whole lot easier to write them. Sometimes our brains get a little hung up on thinking about writing them that we don't get it actually done fast enough. So take some time to get organized, pull your notes together. This year, if you note that you don't quite have enough documentation, you didn't save as many emails, you didn't make as many notes in a log or on some sort of tracking, whatever it is that you need to be using more of. If you didn't do enough this year, there is no time like the present to start for next year. So pull that information together and give it some thought based on the review form itself. What are they doing well? What are they meeting your expectations on? And what are they not doing well? Let's take a look at some of those examples. As you're preparing those words, be specific and original to the person whenever possible. You don't want to state things like, I feel that Lisa does, or I noted that Joseph does. And when you remove the I out, it becomes more formal and more professional. We don't want statements in there like, I feel. We also usually write in third person because as soon as we start using the word you, defenses go up. It doesn't quite read the same way that we want it to sound. So using a third person approach, removing I, we, me, removing you as a second person voice, using a third person voice helps us write clearer, more formally, and more professionally. Check your writing. Most of us didn't grow up to go to work to write performance reviews, right? This just came with the territory. So if spelling or grammar or just how you write is not your strength, access some resources, tap into your peers, your HR team to look for some guidance in those areas. There are ways to improve that, and we all want to help. Let's look at a couple of examples in terms of thinking about writing prompts. And you'll have some of these examples in the handout that accompanies this video. But I want to break them into broadly three categories. What might be some statements we could use for unsatisfactory performance or improvement that is needed? What might be some statements we could use for meets expectations and requirements? And what might be some phrases we could use if someone is exceeding those or outstanding? Let's take a look at a couple of topics. This, again, is in general, so you can apply them in ways that make sense for you for the position you're reviewing. But contributions to the team. So some of the sample comments, some writing prompts you might want to think about are, if they are meeting expectations on that, they regularly do what's asked of them to the best of their ability. They meet daily goals and consistently produce high quality work. But if they're not meeting expectations in some of those, they might hesitate, or they're reluctant, or maybe they refused to participate or take on a new assignment. You can see in those examples, we're starting to distinguish between meets expectations and something lower, but also an example there of exceeding. This person always asks others how they can help when they have extra time. Consider how you layer those in there. What's your expectation of meets? What would be an example of going above? What would be an example of not meeting that expectation? It's also important to have a couple of back pocket questions. So I like these as ways that you can prep your employee. When you set up that performance review conversation, you could give them a question or two to think about when they come into that appraisal meeting. If you've had somebody on your team for a long time, and this has become kind of a rinse and repeat process where they walk in and go, all right, here we go. And you sit down and it could take less than 10 minutes, signed, and they're back out the door. Maybe challenge them this year with one question or two questions just to help them think through, what do they like most about their work? How could we help them do their work even better? Two questions I put up here for you are, what are your top strengths when it comes to working with others on your team? What ways have you shown your support to the team this year? There are all different kinds of questions, and while we don't want to overwhelm them, we want to give them a chance to participate in this process. Let's look at another set of writing prompts that may help. These are around safety. So if I have an employee that meets expectations, again, you have to decide what your level of expectation is. But here's a few examples. This person wears PPE at all times. They perform all work within safety guidelines. They value safe work procedures. Now, if I have somebody who doesn't meet in those areas, these might be some of the writing prompts that would be some of the comments in the appraisal. They failed to adhere to safety rules how many times? What do you have documented? When did you have to follow up with them on a safety violation or risk? They disregard safety directives and then provide examples, or they only use the right PPE when told. If somebody goes above and beyond or meets expectations, it might be them encouraging others to be safe. They might actively propose improvements to reduce hazards on the job. Now remember, if we expect everybody to actively participate and propose improvements, that's really our meets expectations. So as you go through the writing process this year and prepare for that conversation, give some thought to, what do we expect? If you're not clear on it, talk with other people on your team, access your HR folks, and have some conversations around, what do we expect and how can we better prepare employees next year to be clear on those expectations. A couple of follow-up possible questions on safety would be, you know how critical safety practices are for us. What have you done in your area to reinforce those safety requirements? What are some changes you have made to address safety concerns we've previously talked about? What, if any, safety requirements would you say we need to add? Or for what we have, how could we reinforce those better? Again, these are just suggestions, but as you prepare that review, think about ways that you could not only measure them better, but give them something to contribute back in the conversation so that you're in better alignment going ahead this year. Let's look at one last set. I built these around a theme of trust. They could go to company values, they could go to teamwork, they could go to taking good care of the work they do. Here are some writing prompts. Somebody in this example who meets expectations accepts feedback about work from others. They don't get defensive. They speak up quickly upon making a mistake. They're professional and knowledgeable. Somebody who might be lacking performance in this area might be getting impatient or demonstrates frustration with others. That their body language doesn't often send a professional team message. And so you might be able to follow that up with examples. Somebody who does very well in these kinds of areas, you might write a comment. They proactively identified issues and worked collaboratively to solve a problem. How many of us would like to see that written on our performance appraisal? That our leader recognized that we really worked hard with another group of people to solve something that made it better for other people. Even to be told we're one of the most trusted team members. Again, don't get hung up on, well, maybe the employee wouldn't take it this way or that way. You know your team best. Really stretch the way you're choosing your words to reinforce what you want in your employees. And we love when team members are actively sought out for their advice. Some of your more seasoned team members who have lots of knowledge about the work process or the product or the workflow, when other people seek them out, it's a great way to recognize the positive influence they're having on other people. Couple of those expansion questions. There's a time when your frustration got the best of you. How did you prevent that from happening again? Or we want everyone on our team to perceived as helpful and supportive. What would help you do this even better? Are there examples you can think of when you've been reluctant to trust other team members? What would help you do this better? What helps you the most when you have to follow up on something you may have promised but are running into obstacles to do it? Again, these questions are just ways to engage and plan your review session to have more value for you and the employee. We want to avoid some of the common writing errors. Horn and halo go together. When an employee does something that is so maybe awful or bad or impactful that it skews the entire review negative, we need to pay attention. We want to accurately provide statements and ratings that are true to that standard or criteria. We want to make sure that one bad or halo, one really good something doesn't skew all of the scoring. We also want to make sure we're avoiding central tendency. Meets expectations, meets expectations, meets expectations. Right down the middle. Sometimes it's easier because if I go exceeds or doesn't meet, I don't have to write as much. But your employees need the truth from you. How do you see their performance? If they're exceeding and outstanding, tell them. If they're not meeting expectations, an inaccurate performance review can really create some obstacles later. This is our opportunity to have a candid, upfront conversation with an employee under that expectation that they want to do well and that we all can improve from feedback. It's really important that we also, when we're writing the review, compare the employee to the position, not one employee to another. So we want to avoid that comparison error. When we compare people to other people, it isn't done in a way that's as fair as it should be. We want to take that person to the job standards. We also know in a 12-month review process that our memories typically capture the last couple of months. That's why those documentation and notes become really important. So I want you to pay attention to that recency error. Really make sure you're stretching back over that last year. If you didn't have them for the entire year, check in with others, review the HR file, talk to other supervisors that may have worked with them or other leads that have firsthand knowledge of that employee's work. You want to collect as much information and insight and perspective as possible so that employee gets the best well-rounded review we can offer. Remember, as we wrap up this session for today, delivery is important. Plan for the delivery, because when you're writing the review, you want to be able to present this as accurate, placing it with high value and as a valuable part of the process, focused on continuous improvement. While we want to deliver that, we need to plan for that during the writing stage. We also want to make sure that when we set up that time to meet one-on-one with the employee, we're not surprising them. That we're not saying, hey, come on in, we're just going to get your review done. We want to set up a time. We want to hold ourselves accountable to that time and not reschedule it. We want to shut down our computers and put away our phone. We want to make sure for that 20, 30, 40 minutes, they have our full attention. We want to have our notes and examples ready. We also want to remember that if for some reason we're surprised in that process, that the people we're meeting with have an opportunity to ask their questions. But if we're not ready to answer, or something just goes a little more off track in that meeting, that you can often pause and just say, you know what, you've raised a good example I've not thought about. Let's both take some time. Let me do some research. We can continue with the rest of the performance review, and I'll follow up with you on that particular note. If something comes up during that review meeting that just doesn't seem solvable right there, or maybe you need to take a break and regroup, don't hesitate to do that, and then contact your manager or HR team to help support you in identifying maybe what the issues were and how we can work to resolve them. It is so important that while we write the reviews, we plan the dialogue so that we have ways that we can focus on how to help the employee. We can have a couple of questions prepared ahead of time. And maybe on your team, you want to pick out 2 questions that you're going to have everybody think about so that when they come into that review process, they're ready to engage in a little bit different way this year than they have been in the past. Be clear. This is not a time to avoid difficult conversations, so don't minimize a concern you have by just shuffling it off to the side. Be honest. Support your statements with facts. Avoid opinions or subjective language as much as possible. Document everything, the negative and the positive. Don't wait a year to tell employees that they're not meeting their goals. Remember, this is an ongoing, continuous conversation all year long. So even once this year reviews are done, remember the work continues. Give employees the benefit of the doubt initially. Listen more as you work through their emails, your notes, and get ready for that conversation. Be ready to listen. Make sure that you're tuning in for resistance. If there's somebody on your team you're struggling a little bit more, as you prepare the review and get ready to meet with them, ask someone to help you role play it. Think about why you might see some resistance, and let's look at that before you get into that conversation. As we think about this time today, remember to view appraisals as a tool to improve and develop others. Keep aligning and standardizing the performance criteria. After you finish the review process this year, make sure that you're now ready to think about what do we expect? How can we align our expectations across our teams in order to get even better performance this next year? Provide continuous feedback. Use information from multiple sources. Set clear expectations. Involve employees. Check for some of your own biases and assumptions, and be the leader who gives helpful feedback to others so they can improve. This was a few minutes today. It's an investment in reminding you, even if you've only done this a few times or it's your first year of writing appraisals, it's a learning process. For those of you who've been doing this a lot of years and even a few more decades, use this opportunity to connect with your employees in a new way, because the future of UEA is dependent on your employees and continuous improvement in performance. There is so much potential there, and you are a leader that can help make that happen. Thanks for taking some time with us today. Find some new ways to make this better, and I look forward to talking with you again in the future. Make it great.